DBS community, welcome back to another video here with Kyle Chris, and today we're going to be going over the next red deck that is scheduled to come out here in set 19, which is going to be the Android 13 deck. Now make sure you guys like and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think of the set. If you guys are getting ready for Nats, if you're not getting ready for Nats, if you're just getting ready for, just to play these decks, just at your locals or whatever. So this leader is, it's weird. It has a lot of different characteristics of other leaders that we've seen in the past. Most recently, definitely some characteristics of the red Sin deck. Now, obviously, this deck is not, I don't think, nearly as aggressive as Sin could be, but it definitely has some interesting characteristics of it, mainly being the fact that the leader has the ability of drawing a card on the front side, which is incredibly powerful. So, permanent, this card can't attack. We have Jiro's supercomputer. Activate main, switch this card to rest mode. Search top 5, add up to 1 red Android card among them to your hand, and then shuffle. And then you awaken up 4 left, or if you have 2 or more energy and 1 or more Android, 14 and 15 cards, both red with energy cost of 1 in your battle area and or drop. And then you awaken by restanding 1, and then you restand this card. So it's the same thing as Sin, and then you strike down the 6 life, which is a little bit different than Sin. Now, I think it kind of maybe balances out a little bit because Sin does have the ability of taking its own life due to the Dragon Ball effect. That deck definitely draws a little bit more than this one does, so that's unfortunate for anyone who's going to compare the two and saying that it's getting better or, on the same level. But being able to search out an Android, a red Android, is pretty prominent because the majority of our deck is going to be red Androids. Now on the other side, we have Android 13, Terror's Inception. Auto wins card attacks. You get to choose one. You either get to play a Android 14 or 15 card from your hand, or you get to draw one. Now essentially, the Android 14 and 15 are essentially going to draw you a card, but you don't have to play those cards. And then Auto, place one energy card, Android card from your energy, Z-Energy in the drop. When you play a red Android, you get to add a red Android from your drop to your Z-Energy. So why this is good is this allows you to cycle cards, because there's sometimes you want cards in your energy, in your Z-Energy as opposed to your drop, and vice versa. And when we go over the archetype, you'll kind of see that as to why. But there's definitely cards that you want in your drop area instead of being in your Z-Energy. So it just kind of depends on, I guess, the scenario. And then this leader does have a Z-Awaken. We have Android 13, essentially Super 13, and you have a Z-Awaken for 1 colorless, which is very interesting. So this it's basically stating that you could run different multicolored cards in this deck. When this card attacks, you get to play up to 1 Android 14 or 15, both at the cost of 1 from hand or drop, and then activate battle. Place up to 1 Android 13 card, 1 14 and 15 card from your Z-Energy to the drop. Draw 1. This card gets 5k and double strike for the turn. So this is good on both offense and defense. So obviously the double strike doesn't really matter on defense too much, but being able to give your leader a 5k bump is not bad for a red deck, right? Also drawing a card, right? You can be, being able to draw a card on your opponent's turn. And this deck does build quite a lot of Z-Energy very quickly. And also just giving your leader double strike. This is essentially another way of just kind of cutting Champa from your list, essentially. Just another leader that has built-in Champa in the deck archetype, and just gives you a lot of synergy with how this archetype wants to run. And now we're going to go into the deck itself and kind of go over what the archetype is supposed to do and give you guys some of the tech cards that I think would be pretty suitable for the deck itself. Alright guys, so this is the list in its entirety. We'll go over the Z deck a little bit after this. But this is a 53 card list. We'll go over every card individually. I do think this is a pretty straightforward list. There's a few changes you can make, which we'll go over when we get to those cards. So first here we have Android 17. This is a counter attack. It's a free negate if you are on your Z-Awaken side. And your life is at 3 or less, which I think you have to be 3 life or less to use your Z-Awaken anyways, right? If I'm not mistaken. So, no, 4. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. You have to be 4. So, but it's a free negate. It's a 15k crit. It's not bad. Searchable. It's a card that you can use. It's only good, obviously, in this particular deck, so it's not great for other archetypes. But being able to play out a 15k crit for free as a negate, it's not too bad. Not too bad. Now we have the other negate for the deck. This is Android Assault. If your leader is a 13 card, you negate, and you get to add one red Android at energy cost of 1 from your drop to your hand. And you can pay this card's energy cost. If you are a Z leader, an Android 13 Z leader, you can pay this cost by adding 1 card from your life to your hand instead. So it's essentially like a sparking negate. Which is really cool because you can use this and you can add one of your 1-drops back to your hand, which is good because then it ends up giving us more value later on. Now we have the 3 separate 1-drops here, the Mechanical Assailants, and then we have Uninvited Guest. This is kind of what fuels the deck's main energy, or like their main win condition, and this is what really gives you a lot of the energy advantage over your opponent because you're playing a lot of stuff for free or for very, very cheap. So we have Android 13. When you play this card, you search top 5, you add 1 Android when it costs 3 or less. Now this is any Android. So any Android that you run in this deck, you'll be able to search out that's 3 or less. So in this deck, you can basically search out everything, including this little green guy down here, which we'll go over in a little bit. And then you can also Union Absorb for 1. If your opponent has more than 3 energy, you place a 14 and 15 from your drop under this card, and you get to play an Android 13 with an energy cost of 7 from your deck on top of this card in active mode. Which there are some targets for this, which we will go over in a second. For 14 and 15, they actually do the same exact thing. If all of your energy is mono red, when this card is played, you either, if your leader is a Android 13 Z leader, you get to draw 1. So on your once you actually awaken and get to your Z leader, then these essentially just become draw 1s. So you can actually play them from the drop, play them from your hand. I'm sorry, not drop, because this doesn't play from the drop. Yeah, it actually, yeah. So it essentially becomes like a version of like Trunks Vegeta, where you're playing the guy and then you're just drawing a card off of it. But also these guys will add the opposite one from your deck to your hand, and that's important because we want to make sure that we have all 3 of these. So both of these search out each other. And then we have the 2 uninvited guest 13s. I'm sorry, not 13, but 14 and 15. Yeah, so this guy has blocker. This guy does not. So what happens is, if your leader is, so you both have an activate main. If your leader is an Android 13 and you have 2 more energy, and then you have a the opposite Android in your Z energy. So for 14 it'd be 15, and vice versa for the other guy. Your opponent may choose 2 of their battle cards and have them get 20k, minus 20k, which is just really basically weird wording. They have to choose 2 of their battle cards and give them minus 20k. Now because the card doesn't say choose, actually no, it does say choose, so I don't know why they had this bad wording. This is just awful English here. But you give them minus 20k for the turn. If they don't, you get to draw a card and play the card from your hand for 1. And this is activate main or battle on both turns. And it's the same thing with this guy here. This guy does the same thing. When this guy attacks, it gets plus 5 for the battle, so this becomes a 20k attacker. And then this guy, if your leader, if a red Android 15 is in your Z energy, then it starts with this card to active mode. So this just becomes a 15k battle card that can restand and be used for defense, while this guy is able to be a 20k attacker. So I think 3 is probably the best for these 2, just because you don't have deck space is really tight, and you do have a big archetype that you have to run. So trying to fit 4 in here just kind of felt a little weird. These I think are a little more important here. Now we have the main 7 drop that comes in the archetype, which is Total Annihilator. This is a 25k deflect double strike. If an Android 13 card is under this card gains dual attack and is not affected by skills of red sand card with 20k power or less in any of your opponent's areas. Which is interesting. So this is essentially if you Union Absorb, use the 1-drop Union Absorb effect, then this card then gains dual attack. This card attacks. You choose 1 card from under this card in a combo with its skills negated, and you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards or unisons and minus it by 25k for the turn. And this is dual attack, so it's going to swing for basically 4 damage, and then you're comboing a card from underneath this to go to 30, and you get the next swing by 25k. It's a very, very, very powerful card. And then activate main, you can play this card for 2 if your opponent has 3 or more energy, and you choose the 14 to 15 in your battle area and or drop, and play this card from your hand, which was the errata that you just added, and you place them under this card. So you have two different ways of playing it. Obviously, the better way of playing it is using the Union Absorb effect, which is still 2 energy. Essentially, it could be 1 energy as well, depending on if you play it off of the Gogeta. But that's pretty good. It's a pretty good effect, right? Now, also not being affected by red sand skills. This could be effective at some point. As of right now, I don't think it's too good. But in the future, this could be a pretty interesting skill to have. I think they should have done more with the archetype, saying that it can't be affected by Saiyan skills in some facet without making it broken, because there's obviously a lot of Saiyans in the game. But no, this card is very good. Now, I did add this guy, which is the I think it's Adamantian. I think it's it's Adamantian Avenger. I think that's how you say that. So this is a card from this is before Unison Warrior set, but it's the successor part. We're never gonna play off of this. Obviously, it's a 30k double strike. This part is what's really good about this card. So if your leader is an Android 13, which it is, you choose 3 Android cards in your drop area and place them at the bottom of your deck in any order. Choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode and KO it. Then your opponent chooses 2 cards in their hand and places them in the drop. So this is really cool. Being able to play this card out essentially allows you to kind of weird way like deplete your opponent's hand, but also being able to swing for 30k double strike. Still same effect as this guy here, right? It's a very cool effect. Also being able to replenish your deck. So the one big problem with this deck is that this guy only plays from deck, right? So you can't play stuff from your hand, which is why this guy has the ability of being able to play from your hand. So it's also one of the reasons why we're running Raditz instead, because the other Android super combo is cool. It's just a draw one, right? And we want to be able to tuck this 7-drop and this 7-drop back into our deck, so we don't actually have them in our hand. It just makes more sense that way, right? But this guy can also do that as well. So this guy can also tuck, because it just says 3 androids. So essentially, if you do run an Android super combo, so if you do take out like a Raditz or something, you can end up using you basically can bottom deck your own super combo from your drop area to add it back. You also can tuck this card. You can tuck itself. You can tuck other options of these cards. You tuck your free negate. So you have different ways of things where you can kind of just slowly put things back into your deck, and you're probably gonna get off maybe 1 of these a game, 2 in very, very rare cases. But I do think it's pretty valuable to tuck those cards back in, just so you have other options for your Android 13. Because like I said, this is kind of what your entire deck runs around, right? So being able to tuck this 1-drop back in is also good. We also have some other ways of being able to getting the card back as well. Let's see. Actually, we'll go over that there. So we have the Android 13, the Villainous Threat. This is your new Villainous card from the set. You can play it for 2. When this card's played, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards, 10k power or less, and KO it. It's not great. But the bottom effect, if your leader is a red Android 13, you place a card from your hand under an Android card in your battle area, return up to 1 Android card with energy cost of 1 from your drop to your hand. So you can play out one of these androids here. You can tuck this guy underneath it. Realistically, you want to probably put it underneath this guy here, because then you can combo it then for free to add it to your Z energy. But you can use this to add back the 1-drop guy here, and then you can use this to be able to play off of itself, off of your leader effect, or off of your Gogeta, because this deck, I think it's probably better to run the Gogeta than it is to run Baby or Sin or Jiren or anything else like that, just because you can play out all these 1-drops off of it. Still good, does have the ability of being a game ender with the double strike effect, but also searches the top 3 for a red card, so essentially your entire deck almost is searchable outside of, 2 cards in the deck, so it's pretty good. Vegeta is going to be the secret rare of choice. Kind of the default red secret rare if you're not playing Vegito, since you can't play Vegito in the set because you're not a Saiyan leader. So Vegeta's just kind of the go-to now. Wolfang, testing the ops, imposing presence. This is your defensive package, as well as the one Yamcha. You're probably going to see this in most red decks. Primarily this card you're going to see now a lot more, since Violent Rays has kind of been nerfed into the ground. Omega Shinron. This card has, I think, because we just had set 18, we haven't really seen a lot of as much exploration with this card. I think the most exploration we've seen is that people were playing it in the Vegito deck, because your leader has to be either a a red Shadow Dragon or a red Z leader. People weren't really playing this in Gogeta, but now we are starting to get more red leaders that have Z leaders, so this card just becomes playable in every single one of those, which is crazy to think about, because this card is going to be a red staple now, probably until it gets, you know, removed from the game later on. But this card is a 2-drop deflect 30k triple strike. This card's power is reduced. It gains 5k instead for the turn. And then activate battle, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards or unisons, and it gets minus 3k for the turn for each card in your Z energy. And then if your leader is a Z leader, you choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards or unisons, and it gets minus 30k for the turn. So this card has the ability of negging a lot, and this deck is probably the next best deck as opposed to Red Sin for being able to build a Z deck. I mean, a build Z energy very efficiently to make this card useful. Obviously, you're not building Z energy as quick as Sin is, but being able to build it probably, like I said, second place is still pretty good. You could probably get 4 to 5 Z energy, you know, turn 3, past turn 3, right? We have Android Troop here. This is 14 and 15. So this card does not count for your leader effect, unfortunately, because your leader effect, they have to be 1-drops in red. But this card is an android. It also counts as a free draw. So we actually can use this just as a free draw pitch. Just gives us a free draw. This is kind of one of those weird flex spots you can probably put something else in for. You can probably just maybe put one of these two in. But from someone who's played Android 13 in the past, the green one and the yellow one a little bit too, it's just a cool card that this card just works with any Android 13 leader. So that's why I put it in there. I already brought this up with Raditz. We like Raditz a little bit more because we are going to go down to 4 pretty often. But also being able to tuck these 7-drops back into the deck is very useful, so that way we can play them off of our Android 13. Now the Z deck, we have obviously the Z leader, which we already went over. We have 2 of the Rush Attack Vegetas, just because this is your staple red Z battle card for now, until we get something that's better. But this deck does have a very powerful Android card. So this is a 2-drop deflect unique dual attack blocker. If you have a red Android card with energy cost of 7 or more in play, reduce the cost of this card's energy cost in your Z energy by 1 red. So this makes this a 1-cost 3 Z energy. Auto, when this card attacks, choose up to 1 Android card from your drop with this combo. In combo this card with the skills negated for the turn, this card gains barrier until the end of your opponent's next turn. And then auto, when this card activates blocker, switch it to active mode. So this also can be used off of that as well. I did not mention that, so you can actually pitch this to draw a card, and now you have a free card to use for your Z energy. But this card is incredible. Obviously, it's only going to really work in this deck right now. But you're probably going to get this out, because this, I think you need to have 3 energy, right? And I think this guy also needs 3 energy. Yes, you're not playing this guy till turn 3, which is probably going to be your Awaken turn. So you play him out for free off Gogeta. You tap 1, play out the 13 here, Awaken, and then you can play this guy out, and then you just refill your Z energy. It's a pretty powerful skill. Also, the fact that it is deflect as well, and that the first time you swing, it will gain barrier, which I think is pretty fascinating as well. So it's an interesting deck. Is it a contender for the best red deck in the format? I don't think so. This is more of a fun deck. I think there weren't really any TPs that I saw so far that have boosted this deck up a lot. It's a heavy archetype deck, and the archetype itself takes a lot of tools, and it has a lot of requirements. Like, you need to have a 14 and a 15 in order to play out your boss monsters. So it's a good deck. I definitely think it's a good deck. We'll have to see if anyone decides to play it for anything big. But as of right now, with Sin and Gogeta still kind of running amok, I don't think this deck's going to see a ton of play. But this is a good idea if you do end up playing it. This is a pretty interesting deck idea that you can kind of mess around with and make it your own. So if you guys do like the deck, make sure you guys like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. As always, let me know what you guys think. If you guys would change anything. I'm sure there's some interesting tech cards you guys can come up with, so leave those down in the comments below to share with others. And as always, thank you for the support, and I will see you guys in the next video.